Iranian nationals with jihadist sympathies. You let them in with a laxity that AOC and other radicals insisted on. And the far left is actively embracing people who are the enemy. Pro-Hamas, people who chant globalize the Intifada, the Palestinian uprising characterized by over 130 suicide bombings? Really? And I'm not picking on AOC. I respect her success in developing a following. I just think that she's killing her party. She is a deranged form of Democrat. And I'm pointing her out because she's at the top of the food chain. A recent CNN poll found she's the top Democratic leader who best reflects the core values of the Democratic Party. And this is by Democratic voters. She is not a real one. I was raised by a real one. Google Mario Cuomo, Google Teddy Kennedy, Google Daniel Patrick Moynihan.
Okay, yeah, some of those people are fine. Do you have any like current Democrats that you'd like to point to as a better alternative? And here's the thing, that's not just, I'm not just trying to be like snippy. If you don't, maybe that's the problem. Maybe if you have to go back literally decades for your examples that I might or might not even agree with, maybe that's a problem. Maybe if like, you didn't even cite like Obama or something like that, but maybe that's an issue. And also, again, like he wants to attack her as the top of the food chain, which in terms of power, she's obviously not. He's vastly, as they always do, overstating the control that she has over the party. But his evidence is that people agree with her. That's not an indictment of her. They like her. Why are you trying to torpedo someone that more people than any of those other Democrats, many of whom have been in the public eye for literally decades, are more national figures? One, I think Harris was on there. If Democratic voters believe that AOC better represents their core values than the person that was put up to run for president like 6 months ago, maybe she's not actually deranged. Maybe she's not actually fringe. Maybe she actually is the future, and maybe that's not actually a bad thing. Maybe there's a lesson to be learned here. And just throwing out that all these people are pro-Hamas, and I know exactly what he's talking about there. The dude probably was like the vast majority of, I would say, thinking people, but at the very least, young people in America, and did not believe that murdering tens of thousands of civilians in Gaza was cool. And so I guess he's pro-Hamas. I guess he's pro-suicide bombing because he actively, vigorously opposes the war crimes and terror of the IDF. That makes him a terrorist. Weird that it doesn't work the other way. When you applaud the murder of 10,000 children, that does not reflect poorly on you at all. It has nothing to do with your morals. You're just a pragmatist at that point. Weird how you can make that omelet by breaking 10,000 baby eggs and it does not get any egg on your face. But he said, globalize the Intifada, so I guess he's done. We can never support him for anything. Anyway, that is Chris Cuomo's opinion. He is entitled to it. Bernie Sanders has a different opinion of what lessons we can take from Mamdani's win. He said recently he ran a brilliant campaign. To run a brilliant campaign, you have to run a grassroots campaign. So instead of taking money from billionaires and putting stupid ads on television, which the people increasingly do not pay attention to, you mobilize thousands and thousands of people around the progressive agenda that speaks to the needs of working class people, and you go out and you knock on doors, which he very much did. And if somebody like a Kamala Harris had not listened to her consultants and done that, she would be president of the United States today. Now look, that's obviously speculation, but I agree with Bernie that there are, I think, really easy things that she could have done that it is not being unfair to say she should have known she could have done that would have resulted in her being president. But she unfortunately listened to the more centrist, old school establishment part of the party and focused on the ads and didn't differentiate herself from Joe Biden. I don't want to relitigate the entire thing, but again, the fact that we had that election and now we have a model for the future, and you're more mad at the success than you are at the failure, how do we think that's gonna lead to more success in the future? So Bernie Sanders goes on to say, you do not win elections, in my view, by begging billionaires for huge amounts of money. That's what Cuomo did. Put stupid ads on television that nobody pays attention to. We need an agenda that speaks to working class people, activates millions of people around this country to get involved in that agenda, take on the billionaire class, take on oligarchy. That's how you win elections. That's even kind of how Trump has tried to win elections. It's all a massive scam. It's all a bait and switch, but he at least knows that you should speak to the anger and frustrations and the need that people have for something to be done. The idea that like you just wag your finger at a guy who's actually trying to campaign on something in the wake of him winning. Like it would be one thing if this was in the wake of Mamdani losing in the general election to some crappy Republican or whatever, and then you can wag your finger at him. But on the eve of his, or the morning after his victory, saying no, don't do the way that got people fired up. Don't do that. Do the other thing, sell out to the billionaires, seems utterly absurd to me. And again, by the way, I'm not gonna say that I know everything that Chris Cuomo or the other centrist critics of his have said about him, but you'll notice at least in that, didn't really seem that interested in Mamdani's actual policy platform. He would have you believe that Mamdani's appeal to the voters was, yay, Hamas, all hail Hamas. That's not actually what he was campaigning on. Like you don't even really have to have followed the race very well to know that. That's not what the debates were about. That's not what his door-to-door campaigning or door knocking was about. That's not what his ads were about. It was an economic progressive agenda. That's what he was focused on. By the way, you guys were all getting on like Kamala Harris as being like, oh, she was too much about the trans stuff and all that. She needs to not do, as if that is what she was campaigning on. Well, then why are you not happy that Mamdani made it an economic campaign? Why are you not taking the win on that? His campaign was not about identity politics. It wasn't about the culture war. The backlash to him has been, but that's not what he actually ran on. So take the W, which he just got.